Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Nice to meet you. Hi everyone, my name is Marian Gibbs and I'm an alcoholic. And I want to thank Kevin for asking me to come down here this evening and speak to you, and my friends who drove with me down here, Katrina and Michelle, thanks. And for the people who let me cut in line just now. I get so nervous when I have to speak, and I'm like, can I cut? Embarrassed. Asking for special favors. And I was reading your little baskets. I did on a couple of them, and I was going to make a joke. But then I read one of them. We don't want to hear about what happened last year. So... Because I thought maybe you thought it was me, because I did not get directions. I did not know where I was speaking, what time, anything. And thank God that Tom called and said I could find it online, so I could show up. And but I wasn't the one who made the call last year. Thanks. Anyway, I'm going to tell you about what it was like, what happened, and what my life is like today. And it's a blessing from God that I'm sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't think that AA would work for me. I just knew it couldn't work, because I've never been able to do anything in my entire life. And so, by the grace of God, I have 17 and a half years of sobriety. And it's one day at a time. So if you're newly sober, when I got here, my sponsor was 8 years sober at the time. And she says, I have a commitment to stay sober the rest of my life. Yeah, you can. What about me? I'm worried about today. And she said, Marian, we do it one day at a time. I'm like, oh, yeah, I could do one day. And, by the grace of God, one day at a time is added up. And I grew up out in Lancaster, and it was Jack Daniels and rock and roll. And I had a really good time, and I partied a lot. And it didn't affect my life too much at that time. I graduated high school a year early, and but I never was quite right anyway. My brother was class president, and my sister was on homecoming court, and then there was Marian. And people would say, is that your sister? And my brother no, I don't know her. And then my friends would say, gee, is that guy your brother? I'm like, oh no, we just have the same last name, I don't know him. Because nobody wanted to associate, because I ran with that other group of people. And and my whole life has been that way. I just didn't fit in anywhere, and it must be a common thing, because I went on a panel with a good friend of mine years ago, and I was meeting him at Denny's, and he said, did you ever think you were adopted? I'm like, yeah, my whole life. He goes, me too. And then we asked the other panel members who came. My family was like this weird, they all fit in, and they all became something, and, they got married once, and, then there's Marian, and married several times, and had a couple live-in boyfriends, and my parents were like shaking their head, and what happened to her? But like I said, I drank a lot, and I had a lot of fun, and then I moved to Los Angeles. I got married at the age of 19, and had no business getting married, because I don't know anything about being married and what it takes to have a relationship. And so I went to work at a law firm down in LA area, and the girls would go out on weekends, and I would just party at home with my husband, drinking all the time. And of course, that marriage didn't last, and he moved out on a Wednesday, and I went to work Thursday, and I asked the girls, I said, are you going out this weekend? And they said, yeah. And I said, great, can I come? And they said, sure. So I go out, and we go out to some nightclub down in Los Angeles, and everybody's... I'm like, ooh. They said, here, have one of these. And it was a Long Island iced tea. 8 Long Island iced tea later, I am having a good time. And I like the way alcohol made me feel. I drank for the effect produced by alcohol. And I drank every night after that. And one night I decided not to drink, and I started crying for the loss of that marriage. And I thought, forget it. I don't like that. So I took a shower, and I went out to my bar, and I drank. because alcohol was my only solution. I didn't know how to deal with those feelings. So I drank. So I was drinking pretty heavily at this time, and, I got arrested pulling into my garage. Van Nuys Police Department. I'm pulling into the garage, and they're like, what? So now I have to go down to get processed through court. My girlfriend's drunker than me because we had a rule, whoever drove had to stay more sober. So she can't even stand, but they give her the keys to my car to pick me up on an OR. And I had said right before then, I said to my girlfriend, I said, I think I'm drinking a little bit too much. I think I'm going to cut back after the Halloween party, which was October 31st, but I only made it but I got arrested on October 30th. So, and I loved the court system because, see, now I have to go to court, I have to go to AA. I'm on a restricted license, so that means I can only drive to and from work. So it'd be my night to drive, and I'd say, I can't drive, but here's my keys. And that just freed me up to drink like I wanted, so I didn't have to worry about how much I was drinking. And so then I had to go to this court order to AA, and I had to go to some hospital therapy group. I don't know if they still do that anymore. I haven't had a DUI in a long time. And so I go to this little hospital therapy program, and they're talking about stuff, and I'm like, oh. So then I went to my first AA meeting, and the guy was a Skid Row bum, lived in a cardboard box. And I thought, my God, if I lived in a box, I'd go to AA too. Because, see, I'm 23 years old. And my life is just moving right along, and I'm having a really good time. But if I had to live in a box, I'd go. And I went back to but the guy was really funny. And I went back to my little hospital therapy group, and I said, if I have to suffer an hour and a half during an AA meeting, at least the guy was funny. It was a pretty good meeting. And they said, better than that, there's a bar next door. Oh? So sure enough, there's a bar. So there goes my court card into the basket, and it was a good-sized meeting like this, so they're not going to miss me. I went next door to the bar, drank beer, and played darts. And I never heard the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. My employer told me right after that, we think you're drinking a little too much. Now, the managing partner and the administrator were both sober members of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was offended. It talks about that in the big book. I'm like, can you believe they think I drink too much? Now, I'm drinking every night until 2, coming to work smelling like booze, drinking on my lunch hour. I can't wait till 5 because there's a bar downstairs in the bottom part of the building. And then I never understood. I'd go out with my girlfriends, and we'd go have a couple drinks, and they'd go, okay, well, I'm going to go home. I'll see you tomorrow. What? You're going home? I'm going out. Because, see, I didn't know that once I had the first drink, I had to keep on drinking. I didn't know that. And so I just continued to drink. That's all I could do. So my life took a pretty quickly downward spiral at that time. My girlfriend that I was going to bars with, we became roommates, and my drinking was taking on more serious proportions, and she used to come back after our nights out drinking, and she'd go, man, I can't believe what you said last night. I'm like, what? And she'd tell me, I'm like, no. She goes, yeah. I said, Debbie, tell me I didn't say that. She said, you did? And I'm like, was she mad? She goes, she was pissed. I'm like, ugh, all right. As my drinking progressed, she said, I can't believe you did that. I said, did what? You know what you did? No, I don't. And at the end of the friendship, and it wasn't the end of my drinking, she said, get out of here, now. I'm like, what? You know what you did, get out. I don't know. And one day I come home from work, and she left me a note. She'd moved out, and she said, you scare me. Can you believe her? Now, I was ticked off that she moved out because it was the first of the month and rent was due. So I did the only thing I could do. I never paid another penny of rent. I had to drink. I lost that job, and to the point where I was no longer employable. I can't even come out of my house. I'm a smoker, but I got 50 bags. At that time, they had paper bags that I would pick cigarette butts out of and smoke them, because I can't go next door to the liquor store because one of the Korean guys always talking to me and wants to know why I'm buying more Chore Boy. And if you don't know what that's for, then it doesn't matter. But I can't go out. I have no electricity in my house and no hot water and no telephone. I'm wired up to my neighbors so I could call out for Domino's Pizza and a six-pack once a week. And I had extension cord thrown from the parking structure up over the balcony that plugged in a stereo, a fan, and a lamp. There's nothing wrong with the way I'm living. See, because the book says our alcoholic life becomes our only normal one. It does not matter how low I'm going. I haven't even showered in 2 weeks because I got no hot water, so I'm not going to hop in there, man. It's cold. Peeking out that little hole, seeing who's at my door, depending what you got if you're coming in. And there's nothing wrong with that. I got maggots in my refrigerator and freezer because I don't have any power. It's okay with me. Now, I had 8 warrants on that drunk driving because I could never make it to court because I'm always drunk. And it's really sad because, when I went to court, the first time I legitimately missed the date. Then after that, I'm just too loaded to go. And so after the third time, and I said, well, my lawyer's not here. I never even called a lawyer. He goes, well, then we're going to lock you up. I go, oh, no, I'll take that public defender then. So he wants to know why I wasn't there the last visit, or the last court date. I go, I got snowed in Seattle. You got snowed in Seattle? And I said, yeah. And he says, well, do you have airline tickets? No. We drove. He goes, do you have hotel receipts? I said, no, we drove straight through. Gas receipts? I said, no, my brother paid. And this is the lie I told to the judge. Just one more thing not to, have to do it. And I didn't get that warrant cleared up till right before I got sober. I got that on October 30th, 1985. Now, at that time, I had gone to jail on a drunk driving, and, the 4th of July's were hard weekends for me. I don't know why. That was always the holiday I got myself in trouble. And my parents didn't celebrate it for several years after I got sober, because 2 years in a row I was in jail, and my last year I was in a blackout in Mexico. So my parents hate that day. So, my parents come down, and when I got out of jail, I make it back to my apartment, and most of my belongings are missing. And I'm screaming up and down this apartment complex, who stole my stuff? Not that you'd want it, because believe me, if you're alcoholic like me, it's not worth saving. And finally, one of my neighbors comes out, and he said, Marian, your parents were here. Really? He goes, yeah, they moved you out. Because, of course, I got the eviction notice on my door, because now it's July. I haven't paid rent since January. And your parents came, and they heard you were in jail, and your car's been repossessed. Well, it was impounded, and so I get out and I have to call my parents, and of course I have a big lie. Well, when I call the house, I get my sister-in-law. She says, your dad's had a heart attack and he's in the hospital. So now I have to make a call. See, because I didn't think my drinking was hurting anybody. My mother once called me and she said, Marian, we are so concerned about you. I said, Mom, when you see my picture on TV that says, do you know this girl? Then you worry. Get off my back. Yeah. My parents are getting older now, so it's not as funny as it used to be to me. But so, here my drinking had caused all this problem in my family's life, and all I'm thinking about is me. So my parents finally do an intervention, and they come down and they put me into rehab. They take me back up to their house, and I decide to go water skiing outside of Porterville with my friends who aren't alcoholic, but of course I call my biker boyfriend who meets us up there, and I drink and party the whole weekend. And when I got home, my car that I had gotten out of impound was now repossessed. And my parents said to me, Marian, you've been lying all along. You've been drinking and getting high. And you have 2 options. You're either going to go get some help, or we're going to take you back to LA and drop you off on the streets. Well, okay, I'll go get some help. I'm plotting my course. So my parents take me at that time. AV Hospital had a in-house patient thing, and I'm sashaying down that hallway with my mom and dad, and there's 7 guys in that day room when I walk by. And I go, wow, I hope that's where I'm going, because my primary purpose for those 7 men, it was not anything about getting sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. So I sat in that thing for 30 days, and those people who came to speak were the boringest people I've ever heard in my life. And they had all these H&I panels that came in here, and this one broad came on every one and shared at every paragraph. My name's Vicki. I'm an alcoholic. I'd like to talk about this here. Then we'd read the next paragraph. My name is Vicki, I'm alcoholic, and I'd like to talk about this. And I'm like, shut up, God. My name's Vicki. I'm like, I'm going to have to hit that woman. I hated her. She was just this nice little thing, and I just hated the broad. And I'm like, man, they took me, I was outpatient after I detoxed for a week or so in there, and those H&I people would take me out to outside meetings, and, I got sober at the back door, and the first chapter we went through was chapter to wives, and they said, Marian, would you like to share? I'm like, no, I'm not a wife of an alcoholic. It has nothing to do with me. They smiled, said, keep coming back, whatever. But I met him. My whole life has been meeting him. I met him when I was in rehab. A chronic 30-day relapser. So, needless to say, my parents were not happy when I transitioned out of the hospital to their house and I'm getting an apartment with him. They didn't even get off their duff to help me move. They were like, no. So we moved over to this apartment complex, and like I said, he's a chronic 30-day relapser. And when I was sitting in that rehab center, this old guy, Willie, I saw him today, he came in and my mom was picking me up. She goes, so what do you do every night? He says, I go to a meeting. My mom's driving me home. She goes, that guy has no life. I go, no. I'm going to do my 90 meetings in 90 days and cut back. She goes, I think you should. Well, the big book says give it a year, but not me. I only hear the rehab thing, 90 meetings in 90 days, so I did that, and then I cut back. Well, when I got myself a sponsor, they told me to get a sponsor, so I did. One that didn't give direction. They didn't tell me to get one that gave direction. I just got a sponsor. I'd chit-chat with her every once in a while on the phone, and didn't go where she went to meetings, and the back door was a really dark and dingy place, and had a bare light bulb, and these old rotty sofas in there, and all these low-bottom drunks went there, and fist fights, and throwing ashtrays, and man, that's where I belong. But after those 90 meetings in 90 days, I came home and that boyfriend's loaded. I said, honey, you're going, I'm going. And I went and got me some tequila and then scored some dope, and there I was, 8.5 more months. And if I thought it was bad, it got worse. So, we have to be evicted from our apartment there in Lancaster, so we moved down to Tahunga, because that's a good place for alcoholics to live. And, and I love Tahunga, but I had to get a job because that psychiatrist in the hospital cut me off of disability, so now I had to get a job, so I finagled my way from this friend of mine at this law firm for a job, and I swear to God, my grandmother died 3 times at that job. I would get my clothes out of the trunk of my car and shake them out, and, because I've been partying all weekend. I haven't even been home, and do I look okay? They stink, and I'm going to work, and late. I'm lucky I rolled in there at 10, and long lunch, and cutting out early because I got something going on, and, and it was just horrible. It was just those poor people. And so, one time I didn't show up to work for a few days, and that boyfriend and I are passed out on the couch, and I had a crack under my front door about this thick, and so we're laying there, and I've unplugged my phone because I don't want anybody disturbing me while I'm getting loaded, and I hear this, and I'm looking, and I see those shiny black boots. I'm like, shh, it's the cops. Well, they ain't going anywhere. Because, see, my employer's called the police department, say, she hasn't showed up for 3 days, we think she might be murdered or something. So I'm not getting off that couch. So eventually the cops wiggle up the window and use their baton, and there we are laying on the couch, and I feigned startledness, and I let them in. Of course, I got bruises on me, because if you're an alcoholic like me, you fight a little bit. So the cop's like, well, your employer called and wants to know what's going on. Quick thinking alcoholic, I go, I was down at Ralph's, and this guy, he tried to abduct me. I give him a full description of the guy, the van he was driving. The cops give me a little card for counseling. Like, they call my employer and tell him I was attempted kidnapping effect, and I'm devastated. And my employer sends this bouquet, I swear to God. Take the rest of the week off. I'm like, great. So now I can party the rest of the week freely without having to worry about getting to work. Well, then, I go back to work and I have to tell the story. I got to tell it to Tom and Katrina and to everybody. And then my head says, if you don't go for counseling, they're going to know you're lying. So I get the card that I got from the police department, and I called victim assistance counseling. And now I'm going to get counseling for an assault that never happened. All the alcoholics laugh. My parents would be here crying if they heard this stuff. You did what? So, I drank for a little while longer, and what happened was, my last 3 years, I was a violent blackout drinker when I drank, and I hadn't had fun in a long time, and I still got that warrant, and that boyfriend went to jail, and I'm calling to see if I can come visit. Well, why don't you come down and see? I go, no, why don't you run me and see? Well, I still had the warrant, so, what happened was when I sat in rehab, I wrote a couple letters to the judge. Gee, could you tell me the disposition? I'm sitting in rehab. I'd like to clear this up. And I never heard from him, which came back later to help me. So anyway, I get the bright idea to go with the girls to Mexico. I know what happens every time I go to Mexico. I drink tequila. The last thing I know is I'm dancing. The next thing I wake up, I got a black eye, a fat lip, cracked ribs, no panties, parked in the desert, the car door open, my money gone. I'm like, ooh, ow. And I make it back to my hotel, and nobody answers, so I had the little maid let me in, and my girlfriends are gone, and their luggage is gone. I'm like, well, man, they couldn't have gone far. I drove. So I slept for a couple hours, and they still weren't there when I woke up, so I laid by the pool for a few hours. By the end of the day, I realized they're not coming home. So now I got to come back. Well, it turns out that I got in a fight with them and the federales, and I tried to run my girlfriends over. And they got their luggage, and the federales took them to the border, and they caught a Greyhound bus home. And they called my family and said, she's crazy. So I call my parents, and they think I'm on drugs. And I didn't do any drugs. That's what I do on alcohol, but I'm not alcoholic. I am not an alcoholic, my God. I am 26 years old. I can't live without alcohol. So after that, I made a call to those people I met in H&I. And they're like, why don't you come up here? And I go, well, I don't have enough gas. And they go, well, yeah, I have enough gas to get here. We'll get you home. And Gary's here, and I stayed at his house, and my future husband, that's now my ex-husband, and another guy named Randy lived there. And well, I'll get to him in a minute. So I come up to these AA meetings, and I'm not an alcoholic, and I can drink. The book says countless vain attempts, and I'm not countless yet. I still got another shot or two in me. So now I have a blind date with Tom. My friend set me up. Could you believe it? I'd like you to meet my friend. She's a drunk, but So I have this blind date with Tom. And we're sitting there drinking, and I see Ted. That's it. He's the one. So I blow off my date to go home with Ted. And I had the moment of clarity. I'm in the middle of doing the nasty with this guy, and I get that moment of clarity. And I'm like, dude, I gotta go. He's like, now? I'm like, right now. I get my stuff on and bye. See, because I was an alcoholic. See, but I didn't tell anybody in AA that I met in Lancaster that I drank that night. Because, see, I wanted my sobriety date to be July 4th. Free from alcohol. Independence Day. Well, on August 4th, 3 members from AA called to congratulate me on my 30-day chip. By the third call, I'm in tears. I said, I don't have 30 days. I have 3 weeks. And they said, that's okay. So again, I'm 3 weeks sober, and I'm engaged. Ladies, it doesn't work. He was the one. So what happened was I'm absolutely beat by alcohol. I cannot not drink, and I can't drink one more day. What am I going to do? So I'm going to meetings, and I decide to ask this woman to be my sponsor, and I went over to her house. And she says, Marian, you need to do an inventory. But before she said that, she's talking to me. She starts telling me all of Christina's stuff. Because when I got here, I'm not going to tell you about the men I slept with. I'm not going to tell you about the maggots in my refrigerator. I'm not going to tell you about picking cigarette butts out of my trash can. I'm not telling you any of that stuff. But I'm over there, and she's telling me all of Katrina's stuff, and all of Cindy's stuff, and all of JJ's stuff. And I'm like, oh, my God, I can't tell this woman anything. See, because I got here with a lot of shame and remorse. And I can't tell anybody that kind of stuff. And if I tell her, everybody in AA is going to know about me. And I can't do that. So all of a sudden I'm thinking, I haven't even done the first 3 steps. So I'm sitting in a meeting, and I'm watching these guys get direction from men, and their sponsors are using the book Alcoholics Anonymous. My sponsor's not doing that with me. So I start asking around. I go, do you know any women who are sober who use the book who will take me through the steps? They said, sure. Vicky. Dang. So I had to ask around some more. I go, do you know any women who've used the book? They go, yeah, her name's Vicky. Dang it. Pissed me off. So I called this woman, and I was certain she sponsored every woman in AA, and I had a whole pitch why she needed to sponsor me, and that this other woman wanted me to do an inventory, and I hadn't even done the first 3 steps, and if I hadn't to stay sober and somebody wants to go through the steps, how am I going to help them? She said, I'd be happy to. She goes, we're going to start at the beginning. She goes, you're a real alcoholic. If you want to stay sober, you're going to have to take these steps. All right. She gave me some direction. She says, you need to go to meetings early and stay late and stick out your hand to people with less time and make coffee and pour coffee and empty ashtrays and wipe down tables and never turn down an AA request. I don't even like you people. Fine, I'll do it. And then we started in the doctor's opinion. So I learned about the disease of alcoholism. It explained everything. The physical allergy and the mental obsession. I never knew why. I am out there in the midst of it. I identify with Bill, beaten on the bar. How did this happen again? Because I'm looking at myself in the mirror saying, stop it. And I can't stop, and I got to go out and have myself another drink. And I hate what alcohol is doing to me. I hate what my life has become, and I can't stop. And I didn't know about the obsession, that this time it's going to be different. Well, we'll stop it too. I'm like, all right. Stay away from the tequila and you could drink. Okay. And every time I'm ending up in a pile of crap. One more time. And I'm like, so then it described the physical allergy to me, that once I have the first drink, I can't stop. Well, I didn't know that. Is that why when I go out with the girls, they would have a drink and go home and I keep drinking? And she's like, yes. Well, that makes sense. See, I never knew that. I always thought it was the 8th Long Island iced tea that got me drunk. I never knew it was the first drink. Oh, the first drink. That's a concept. I'm amazed in Bill's story when he talks, I knew I could not have so much as 1 drink. That never occurred to me. I knew so much I could not have 8 drinks. I never thought it was the first. It was the 8th. So now I'm going to meetings and I'm staying late and I'm sticking out my hand. And, when I got a year sober, my sponsor told me to clean up my mouth. And, man, and if you're going to be sober, look sober. I wore a lot of black, a lot of eyeliner. I used to knot my hair all up. And that was something to look at when I got here, I'm telling you. And she told me when I spoke I had to wear a dress. A dress? She said, you're a representative of Alcoholics Anonymous and you need to look the best you can. I'm like, fine. Now, she's taken me through the book, and I went on my first H&I panel at 30 Days Sober. I'm with this big guy named Jay. 6'3", 300 pounds, and it's all muscle in this big old beat-up red truck. And he's driving along. I go, I don't know anything about staying sober. He goes, that's right! You don't! You know about relapse! You talk about that! I'm like, okay. These people were hard on me. So I went to the meeting. I said, all I used to do was smoke cigarettes, drink coffee, and run my mouth. I don't know anything about staying sober. They're like, that's right. So my sponsor had me, I couldn't understand that my life was unmanageable. I was alcoholic, but my life was not unmanageable. Definitely. So at 9 months sober, I'm engaged to be married still, and haven't drank. And I go on a cruise with a normie girlfriend. Now, my girlfriend said before I left, she goes, well, you could probably drink. I said, yeah, probably the first night, maybe even the second night. But I'm certain by the third night I'm going to be hanging naked from that flagpole. So she doesn't understand a drinker like me. So we were on our way to the casino, and she goes, and I had my first unguarded moment that the book talks about. She ordered a Kahlua, and I'm looking at that drink, and I go, oh, I love Kahlua. That's the only thing I ever drank for taste. I go, I love Kahlua. I go, oh, I want a drink. Oh, maybe just a sip. Oh, let me lick the straw. I said, God help me, I don't want to drink. And she got her drink, and we went to the casino, and I said, I'll be right back. And I went down to our room, and I got up chapter 3 more about alcoholism, the insidious insanity of the first drink. There was nothing between me and that drink. And later on, somebody handed me a mirror, and my head said, you ain't smoking it, go ahead. And I knew I was in trouble. And my friend said, you need to put that away. But see, that trip wasn't that successful. I didn't drink or get loaded on that trip. But what I did was I met him on that trip. One more time. And for the first time in my life, I realized that my life is unmanageable. I'm 9 months sober and nothing has changed. I'm not drinking and I'm not getting loaded, but nothing in my life has changed. And I came home and I called my sponsor and I said, I'm done. I can't live this way anymore. She's like, thank God. My sponsor talked for me for about 2 years. The best thing I can be is kind and respectful, No. And every time I called her, the best thing I can be is kind and respectful, No. I didn't know she was telling me I was rude and disrespectful to people. Oh, and she said stupid stuff like, I commuted up and down that 14 freeway for 17 years. And my first year, my finger was out the window, honking my horn, flashing my light, boo! Screaming at her. And after a year, I called her. I said, Vicki, this is going to kill me. She goes, well, you're the one who's chose to work in L.A. I guess you need to practice some acceptance. Oh, man, stupid stuff like that. Keep it simple. So anyway, my sponsor and I, then we went to the second step. And, thank God for my sponsor, because she said that God loved me and he forgave me. And I'm like, how do you know? She goes, because he has. See, and that was really important because I came in with a lot of shame and remorse. And it was important to hear that God loved me and forgave me. And if he forgave me, then I needed to forgive myself. Because, see, I wasn't forgivable. How could I with all the things I'd done and all the people I hurt? And so I had to start forming a conception of God as my own understanding. And she gave me We Agnostics. And I said, Vicki, I don't get it. She says, read it again. I don't get it. Read it again. I read it 20 more times. I said, Vicki, I don't get it. But my first year of sobriety, I was in 3 book studies a week. And one week, they all ended up on We Agnostics. And I finally saw it on the third night. It says, when we were driven to AA by a self-imposed crisis we could neither postpone nor evade, we had to fearlessly face the proposition that God is everything or else he is nothing. He either is or he isn't. What do you choose? And I believe that God was. So if God was, then God was everything. I'm like, oh my God. See, because I didn't know about the power of God in my own life. And that God had the power. And that was always my dilemma. So then we had to do the third step. And it says in the 12 and 12, we think well before taking this step. Well, the 2.5 pages leading up to that third step talks about self-will run riot. Well, my whole life, even at 9 months of sobriety, is self-will. So it was very clear to me. So my sponsor came over and we did the third step prayer on our knees. It was the first time I've ever prayed with anybody. It was the first time I did it out loud. And the first time I ever did it with, on my knees. And I cried. And then it says we immediately launch into a vigorous course of action. So, because I'm a procrastinator, I set the date with my sponsor. And I did my resentments and my fear and my sex inventory. So I set the date with my sponsor, and she came over, and it says, we're prepared for a long talk. Well, it was 7 hours. And for the first time, I had enough humility to share myself with everybody, with one person, with my sponsor and with God. And my sponsor knew everything about me at that moment. And then she left, and it says, we take an hour, we pray from the bottom of our heart that we get to know you better. So I did that, and I tell people today that the silence was deafening. For the first time in my life, I did not have this constant stuff going on in my head. I laid there in absolute peace. And it was like, oh my God. It kind of scared me because I've never had that before. And then I got out the book, and it says we take down our book and we go through the first 5 proposals and see if our stones are in place, because this is the arch through which we shall walk to freedom. So I had to think about whether I've built the arch. So Tom had to do the arch. So I had to look it all up. And the foundation, if you're building the arch, you got the foundation, and Bill's story talks about it. And the dictionary says a basis on which something stands. So that's the first step. The second step is found in We Agnostic, and it's the cornerstone, and it's on page 47, and that's the pieces that come up on the corner. And the dictionary says a stone forming a part of a corner in a wall. So I did that one. And the third step is the keystone, and you find that in how it works. And the dictionary says the wedge-shaped piece at the crown of an arch that locks the other pieces into place. And then the arch is a curved structural member spanning an opening. And it says, did we skip on the cement? Did we forget to put in the sand? See, I had to look to see if I was cheating myself out of anything. Because if my foundation's not strong, it's going to crumble, and I'm going to drink again. And when I was confident that that was true for me, that I had built the arch, that I shall walk a free man, I called my sponsor. So then I took 6 and 7. Now 6, it was so obvious, it was blatantly obvious. See, when I got here, there was nothing wrong with me except I drank too much and did too much dope. That was my answer when I got here. There was nothing wrong with my character makeup. I had no idea that there was anything else wrong with me. I did not know that alcohol was but a symptom. So when I did my 6th and 7th with my sponsor, the 7th step was very easy for me. God, take those things from me, good and bad. Because see, I can't of myself do that. God has the ability to do the things that I cannot do. 8 and 9, I made a list of amends that I needed to make, and then I prayed about each one. Now, when I'm newly sober, I went to a lot of book studies in 12 and 12, and I called my sponsor because I said, what does this mean? Risen so majestically up from the single cell in the primordial ooze. Because if I don't ask, I don't know. I'm reading in the 12 and 12, the first thing it says, good judgment. A careful sense of timing, prudence, and courage is what we need to take this step. I called my sponsor and said, Vicki, it says good judgment. I don't have good judgment. She says, no, you don't. She goes, you're on the first step. You'll have it by the 9th step. Oh, all right. What is this? We joyfully deal with the realities of life. See, because I don't understand this stuff, and I needed someone to explain it to me. So when it came time to making those amends, I talked to my sponsor before I made those amends, and I prayed about each one, and I had to be pure in my heart before I went to them. Because when the people said to me, get out of here, I don't care that you're sober, I don't have to retaliate in kind. Because see, that's my first instinct. And I love in Bill's story when common sense becomes uncommon sense. Because my common sense is to reach out and just slap you upside the head, because that's my only solution. But that's my uncommon sense today. That's not how I live my life today. So I'll tell you about some of those amends. I stayed at that job that I lied about, the attempted kidnapping. And I spent 7.5 years of my sobriety at that job. And I went to work every day. I didn't want to in the beginning. I didn't want to get up. I go, are you sick? No. You going to be sick? No, then go to work. And then I would only take an hour for lunch, and I stayed until 5 o'clock in the afternoon, exactly when my quitting time was. And I made amends to my employer by doing exactly what they paid me to. Those women that I worked with who had to pick up the slack because I'm not there most of the time, I went to them, and nobody ever talked to me at the job because they all hated me because. So I went to them and I said, you know what, I am so sorry. Because of my selfishness and my behavior, you and the other women in this office have had to pick up my job. I said, I'll make it up to you any way that I can. And any time that I have any free moments, I will come down to help you and relieve your burden. And the girl started to cry. And you know what? We had lunch after that. My grandmother was out here, and it was the last time she flew out here. She was 75 years old or something, and she'd been here for 3 months, and I'm in the height of my drinking. And my mother called. She said, your grandmother's been here for 3 months, and you haven't even come to see her. So this is what we're going to do. On the way to taking her to the airport, we're going to stop and pick you up so you can visit with your grandmother. I'm like, all right. But I took a drink a day or so prior to an important event, and that date couldn't be met. So what happened is I drank for the 3 or 4 days prior to my parents coming to get me to see my grandmother, and I make it home, but I'm passed out on that couch. And they're knocking and ringing the doorbell, and I'm like, and I never saw my grandmother. So after I got sober, I made a point to go home and see my grandmother every year to make amends to that woman. And every year I'd cry when I'd come home because it's the last time I'm going to be seeing my grandmother. And on my 7th birthday, I flew back to Pittsburgh, and I made amends to my grandmother. She was like 84 at the time. And it didn't have to be real detailed because an 84-year-old woman doesn't need to know all the stuff. But I told her I was so grateful that I've gotten to know her. And I should have been getting frequent flyer miles for a long time because my grandmother lived to be 93 and a half years old. I should have been getting those miles years before. But you know what the great thing was? I was home a year ago, October, to see my grandmother, and I didn't think she was doing very well, and I thought... And what happened was I go to meetings every night when I'm in Pittsburgh. You got to drive 20 miles to get to a meeting. It's not like here. And I found this group of people that I would come, and I'd see them every year. And so I said to the guy, I said, the next time I come back, I'm probably going to be coming for my grandmother's funeral. And he did H&I work. Can I get myself a commitment? And he said, well, why don't you come speak for me? And I said, I don't like to sign up for speaking, but I'd be happy to do H&I. So last March, I went home to see my grandmother for her 93rd birthday. And my grandmother was still alive, but she was starting to fade. And I got myself an H&I commitment. When all other activity fails, work with another alcoholic. And my grandmother passed this last October. And I had 18 trips home to spend with that woman. And I got to be there for my mother, who was devastated. And a friend of ours moved back to Punxsutawney Phil area, and he drove all the way over to the western side of Pennsylvania to go to a meeting, and I called my friend who lived there, and he said, would you speak for us tonight? And I said, I don't know. Either me or my husband will. And I just buried my grandmother that day, so I asked my husband to do the speaking. And it always helps when you have more time, because I said, you're the newcomer, you do it. And, so I got to make amends to my grandmother. I've been sober longer than I've been drinking now, and I'm not done making amends to my parents. How can you make amends for the things that I've done? Causing a heart attack and telling my mother those things. And I call my parents every night. They're in their 70s now. And I call them every night to see how they are. And I'm the one who shows up when they have a medical emergency. I'm the one they turn to. Last Thanksgiving, the whole family, my mother thanks about what she's grateful for, my brother and my sister and her son-in-law. She gets to me. She says, for always being there for Daddy and me. Because I'm the one who shows up. I'm the alcoholic in and out of jail. My brother and sister went to college, married once, normal people. And they turned to me because I have good judgment today. The 10th step, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. I worked in that law firm for 7.5 years of my sobriety, and my bosses were Jewish, and this is not to offend anybody who's Jewish, but it reflected on myself. I was working for the guy who I didn't get along with in the beginning, when I was drinking, of course. He hated me, and then I had to go work for him, and my boss said, oh, so you're working with the enemy. And I said, I don't know. Things have changed in my life. I can probably work with Bob now. So I went to work with this guy, and we got a royalty check for like $1.62. And I said, well, what do you want me to do with it? He said, put it in a trust account. He goes, and then you need to write the client one for 60% and us for 40%. I'm like, you've got to be kidding. I go, Bob, you are Jewish. And he was mad. And I'm like, I'm sorry. But see, sorry isn't good enough. I had to come home and call my sponsor. See, because what I think is funny is not funny to some people. It's hurtful. You know, who of us has not been innocent of making a racial joke, a gay joke, a handicapped joke, a Jewish joke, a Catholic joke? And I think it's funny, but it hurts. It hurts other people. I was Polish. I hated Polak jokes as a kid. I should know. But yet, it never occurred to me. So I had to go back in the next day, and I closed the door, and I said, Baba, I'm so sorry for what I said. That was so insensitive to me, to you. So he tells me about his parents who were in concentration camps, and his mother was still alive and had the tattoo on her wrist. And it was a very good lesson for me to learn. The 11 steps sought through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with God. So I had to start when I got here. I didn't have much of a relationship. As God keep me sober, at the end of the day, it was thank you, God. Then all of a sudden I'm praying, and my prayers are always selfish and self-centered. Okay, God, this is what I want. Wait a minute. I'm in the middle of my prayer realizing, I go, okay, God, obviously I'm still selfish, so let me start over. So I worked with this chick I hated. Her name was Laura. She had purple hair, nose ring, tattoos, and every other word was the F word. That's before purple hair, tattoos, and nose rings were hip. I hated this broad. She once bumped her knee on the desk, and we sat next to each other. She's rolling on the floor. Oh! She does not exist in my world. And I hated her. I'd go home, and it'd be, I hate that. And I'd go to bed. Oh, I hate her. And all I could do was think about Laura, and I'd wake up in the morning, and I'm sick because I got to go spend 8 more hours with that chick I hate. So I had to start praying. It says prayers consistent and persistent. God, obviously Laura's a sick woman. How can I be helpful today? I prayed that every day. All of a sudden I could talk to Laura, then we could have lunch, and then I stopped praying. Oh, I hate that broad. God, obviously Laura's a sick woman. How could I be helpful and loving and kind today? And so for 7.5 years, I had to pray every day to be kind and loving and thoughtful to Laura. Because see, of myself, I can't. I can't change anything about her, but I can ask God to help me to become a better person, that I could give her that love and respect and tolerance that she deserves, as any human being deserves. And the 12th step, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of this step, we tried to carry this message and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. And I'm running a little short on time. I'm going to tell you a little bit about carrying the message. My first 12-step call was a woman who was on methadone and drinking, and she had knocked the window out of her house, and her house is a pigsty, and I'm walking in there going, ew, man. And then my head says, where do you think you come from? Sit down. And I sat down and I talked to this woman, and she was willing to go get sober if her dog could come. No, your dog can't come. She goes, well, I'm not going unless my dog can come. I said, but you told me you were willing to go to any length. She goes, I am, if my dog can come. And I wrote down my number, and I said, call me if you change your mind, because the book gives us clear-cut directions, and I never saw the woman. My first successful sponsorship was my friend Dana. I had an H&I panel. That changed my entire life, was doing H&I commitments. I had a panel at AV Hospital, and, she asked me to sponsor her, and then I said, call me, and she never calls till I'm getting out Wednesday, and it was New Year's Eve. I go, great, we'll go to a meeting. She goes, I've been here 30 days. I'm not going to a meeting. I go, you don't get out after 30 days, especially on New Year's Eve, and go home. You meet me at a meeting. Fine. So she storms into the meeting, and she leaves, and I don't hear from Dana for a while. And she calls me up. Because she's a blackout drinker like me, so we really hit it off. But she's a little pothead, and she gets thirsty, and when she gets thirsty, she starts to drink, and then she drinks, and she blacks out. I'm like, honey, put it together. Drug's a drug, pot's a drug, alcohol's a drug. You can't have either. And she's like, okay. And she'd come back to meetings for a week or two. Then I wouldn't see her. She'd call me back up. Dana, put it together. So finally one day she calls me up, and I'm only 3 years sober, so this was pretty ballsy of me. She calls me up, and she had another blackout and, all the stuff that was going on in her life. And she goes, I got my Hazelton books out. And I said, do you want to get sober? She said, yeah. I said, then do AA. You don't want to do AA, don't go. Don't waste my time, don't waste your time, don't waste anybody else's time. What do you want to do? She says, I want to get sober. I said, fine, throw that crap out, I'm on my way. And I went over with my big book, and I sat down with her and I said, you're sicker than most. You need to call me every day. I've never done that to another person ever. And she called me every day, and what the great thing was, because it says it later on in the book that once, not only when we share an inventory, but when somebody shares their inventory with us, then we're whole. And she was the first person who shared her inventory with me, and she stayed sober, and what happened was she was 26 years old and developed cancer that traveled to her brain. And every day it was a bad news getting worse, and she left behind 2 young children. And I did things that's absolutely impossible for me to do. I went every day to that convalescent hospital as she lay dying, and I got out the lotion and I rubbed her feet. And I'd read from the big book, and I'd tell her about my day, and she couldn't even talk, and she's laying in a pair of diapers. And I loved that woman. And I went to a woman, and I said, I don't think I can do this. And she said, sure you can, Marian, you're sober. For that you can do anything. And I didn't have to do it alone. Another woman in AA who didn't even know Dana met me every day at that convalescent home up until the time she died. And I was there when she took her last breath. And her family asked me to give the eulogy. You know what? They thought I was like some big cheese. And I'm like, honey, she did more for me than I ever did for her. Because for the first time in my life, I became another human being. I became empathetic and compassionate to someone else. I cared about someone other than myself. I gave everything that I had in me, and I learned to become a friend, and I became a woman because of that relationship. And she was the turning point in my sobriety. You know, I do H&I work, and at one time, I took the boys up at Camp Scudder. It was my first panel on my own, and I liked the way it made me feel. And I'd come out of there feeling really good. And that husband that I'd married at the time go, oh, that's been a good meeting. And I go, yeah, it was a great meeting. Because see, most of the time I felt crappy when I got sober. But I went on that panel and I felt really good. And I liked the way it made me feel that I took another one up there. And then I ended up with 6 H&I panels. Man, I was a busy little beaver. But I did it because I liked the way it made me feel. And for the first time in my life, I realized that I cared about somebody other than myself. I cared about those boys. What do I got in common with 15, 16, and 17-year-old boys? What I cared about was that when I'm competing with a Monday night basketball game out on the field and a football game on TV and a movie, and I got 7 boys, they're there to hear that message. And I liked the way it made me feel. And that's when the turning point happened. It was because for the first time in my life, I realized. It says in the book that when all other activities fail, intense work with another alcoholic. You know, and that really worked because there have been times that I feel really crappy. I tell the women I sponsor, it ain't about you. My problems today are the problems of being sober and successful in life. And so when I get on my little pity pot about whatever's going on, it's like, I go find a newcomer. I give out my number. I talk to someone at the meeting because it ain't about me. A girlfriend of mine moved back east, and but when she was here and I was sponsoring her, and she called up and she was whining one day, and I'm like, well, what do you think that solution is? All right, whatever. The next day she called up, yeah, well, what do you think that solution is there? She didn't have it. By the 3rd day, I go, you know what? It ain't about you. When was the last time you took a newcomer to coffee? When was the last time you were of service? When was the last time you were on a panel? It ain't about you. And I hung up on her. She was 10 years sober. She knew. The next day she called up and she goes, you're the best sponsor in the whole world. I went to a meeting, I got a newcomer, I took her out to coffee, and God, I feel better. Because that's what we do. My life is better because of the newcomer. You know, my life today is grand. I got married. I met David. He's my husband today. It's my last one, I'm telling you. I don't know, well, because Tom and Ted are taken. I mean, I gotta... You know, when I met him, it was Boy Meet Girl on AA campus. I saw him at a midnight meeting. I'm like, man, who's that? But what happened was I met him, and then I didn't meet him again for months. And I was single and celibate in AA. I learned how to do that and how to keep my panties up. And there's a whole section on sex in the big book. It says, pray for the right ideal. And man, guys hit on me, and I'm like, he's not so bad. It's been a while, man. I could take him home. But you know what? I had to look at my motives. It says if our motives are wrong, we will surely drink. this is a fact out of our experience. My motive was not anything caring about Tom. It was about getting my thrill off. And I didn't do it. And there were times I had to get up and walk out of a meeting because, oh my God. Oh. So I met David, and I don't hug men in AA. It's well known in the Antelope Valley. You get a hand. And so when I met David, he did something very nice for me. And he goes, well, think of how you can make it up to me. And a couple months later, he goes, I want a hug. I go, I don't hug men. He goes, no, I want a hug. And I'm like, no, I don't hug men. He goes, you asked what you could do for me. That was nice, and I want a hug. So he stands up, and he's wearing his leather coat. And I said, honey, if you're going to hug me, you need to take that coat off so I get the full effect. But we dated for 5 years. See, I didn't date men in AA, and I didn't date men with children. I don't have children of my own. That's a whole realm I don't even know anything about. So I met him, and he came with 2 daughters, and he was a single father. And so we dated for 5 years before we moved in together. And then we got married after we lived together. And he says, well, why don't you want to get married? I said, wonder if this doesn't work. I've already done it twice now. God, I don't want to find out. I have a hard enough time living alone, and then we're going to throw not only you in there, but a kid on top of it. I don't know. You know what? I love them. They went camping for a week. I didn't go. I don't like the bear thing. And I could not. It was okay during the week because I commuted to Los Angeles and back. But during the weekend, it was killing me. I missed them. My heart was lonely. And I put up a big welcome home sign and tied balloons to their room. And they walked to the door, and I said, oh, I'm so glad you guys are home. I missed you. And I told David, I said, I think I'm ready. And so we set the date. And so we're coming up on our 2nd-year anniversary in a couple weeks. And we've been together 8 years now. I've never made it past that 7-year inch on either of my marriages. So I'm making some headway. And he's the most kind, wonderful person I've ever met in my life. And, he used to come to the Rafters. He lived down here when he was sober. And if you know him, then you know who I'm talking about. And I'm so grateful for him. And I'm so grateful to find out about motherhood and with a teenage girl. And I get to experience all the benefits of her. I've known her since she was 9, and now she's going to be 18. And I'm like, oh, my God. When I'm vacuuming one day, and David goes, Laura has a date. I said, she can't date until she's 16. And he's like, she's 17. I'm like, when? When did she turn 17? Because they grow so fast. And I get to be a part of her life. And that's for the blessing of Alcoholics Anonymous, because those things aren't possible of myself. My life is so full today. I gave up a very good career a year or so ago. I was having some health issues, and my job was weighing on me, and I worked in a tense, hostile kind of environment. And I told them 100 times. I came home, David, I got to quit my job. David, I got to quit. And one day I'm coming home, and I got to quit my job. And I'd just been from test at USC, and I get home, and I sit on my bed, and I go, God, I got to quit my job. And there's this booming voice. Have you lost your fear of economic insecurity, or haven't you? Man, yeah. If I believe that I've taken these steps and these promises have worked in my life, then I need to be willing to walk with faith. And I told my husband, I'm going to quit my job. And he said, okay. And I went in and I gave notice, and I became a housewife for a year. Stayed home and took care of the family. And I've been a career woman my whole life, so it was a big adjustment for me, and I absolutely loved it. And I just recently started going back to work for this little piddly little job. And, but it's a job, and I like it. And, if you're new and you're struggling, get a sponsor that uses the book. Be of service. Get a commitment. My sponsor made me do those things so I become a part of the group. If I had a commitment to show up to make that coffee every week, then that meant I had to be there every week. And the one thing I didn't do was I didn't let my sponsor down. When she told me I had to do something, I had to do it. Because there was one person I believed in my entire life, and that was my sponsor, that she said these things will happen to me if I stay sober and take the steps. And I may not have believed anybody else in this room, but I believed that woman. And she had never lied to me, and she hasn't lied to me. And I'm so very grateful for the people in Alcoholics Anonymous, because the people that I walked in, when I saw you all sitting here, and look at you people, man, I had no idea you were the people that were going to save my life. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. And I'm going to close with this. I love this thing I got, and I think it's so fitting for alcoholics like this. And if you've heard it, then you're going to have to bear through it, but you haven't. It's pretty cool. It says, a drunk fell in a hole and he couldn't get out. A businessman walked by and the drunk cried out for help. The businessman threw him some money and told him to get himself a ladder, but the drunk could not get a ladder from the hole he was in. Then a doctor walked by, and again the drunk called out for help. The doctor gave him some drugs and said, "Take this, it will relieve the pain." The drunk said thanks, but when the pills ran out, he was still in the hall. A renowned psychiatrist rode by and heard the drunk's cry for help. He stopped and he said, "How did you get there? Where were you born? Did your parents put you here? Tell me about yourself. It will alleviate your sense of loneliness." So the drunk talked with him for an hour, but the psychiatrist said he had to leave, but said he'd be back the next week. The drunk thanked him, but he was still in his hole. A priest came by and the drunk called for help. The priest gave him a Bible and said, "I'll pray for you." The priest got on his knees and prayed for the drunk and left. The drunk was very grateful and read the Bible, but he was still stuck in the hole. Soon a recovering alcoholic happened to be passing by. The drunk cried out, "Hey, help me, I'm stuck in this hole." Right away, the recovering alcoholic jumped in the hole. The drunk said, "What are you doing? Now we're both stuck in this hole." But the recovering alcoholic said, "It's okay. I've been here before, and I know how to get out." Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.